Learning how to use an EQ is simple at first, and then the more you start to learn how an EQ works, it starts to get harder. And then there's a point in time where you start to understand how everything works, and then it just clicks. Hey, how's it going? Andrew Barr with Producing in the Box, where I teach you how to make incredible sounding music without analog gear completely in your computer. Today I want to talk about the biggest EQ mistake that you are making, and it might not be what you think. It's not specific frequencies, it's how you're handling these specific frequencies. But before we get into that, if you want to know how to get incredible sounding vocal recordings at home, click the link in the description and download my free guide called The Ultimate Guide to Recording Vocals at Home. In that guide, I go through everything that you need to know, start to finish, on how to get incredible sounding vocal recordings that sound like they should be on the radio tomorrow. So if that's something you are interested in, click the link in the description and download it for free. It is my gift to you for watching my content and for clicking that little subscribe button if you haven't already. So without further ado, let's jump into the DAW. All right, so here we have some guitars and they sound like this. All right, and first thing I did was I separated the lead guitars and the rhythm guitars, and I put those in two separate buses, so that way I can EQ them just a little bit differently to kind of make them sit in the mix a little bit better. Right now we'll just focus on the rhythm guitars here, and here is the technique that I see everybody do wrong. And you should be cutting before you're boosting. Now, if you already know this, still wait just a little bit because there's something more to this than just, I'm sure, what you've heard 1,000 times before. You always want to cut before you boost. But if we take a listen to these guitars without anything on them here, just the rhythm guitars. They're a little bit muddy, and there is just a couple harsh frequencies around like 4K and around like 2K that I cut here. So let's turn the EQ on and off for this section here. Really cleans it up quite a bit. I scooped out a little bit of the mids here, rolled off the low end so it doesn't fight with the bass or the low end of the other instruments. And there was a frequency around 2K and around 4K that was a little bit nasty as well. And let's solo 4K out here, just because I know that was one of the worst frequencies in the spectrum. Yeah, that just makes it sound super brittle, and cutting that really, really helps. So you want to sweep through, find frequencies that sound a little bit harsh, like that one, and that just made it sound a little boxy, so I scooped the mids to kind of make everything fit right in the mix. Now, we cut with a digital style EQ. Now, when you're ready to start boosting frequencies, you want to boost with a analog style EQ. Cut with a digital style and boost with an analog style. And if you still feel like you want to cut a little bit, you can totally cut with an analog style EQ. But what an analog style EQ does is it adds harmonics and just that natural vibe in the analog style that we've really grown to love. And now we have it inside of our computer. So when you want to start boosting frequencies, this is where you want to start doing it. I'll turn on everything, the compressors here and the saturation, and then I'll just bypass just the analog style EQ. And I am boosting just a little bit. There's a 1.8 here as a high shelf, and I'm boosting 3.2 kilohertz at about 1.7. So it's real light, but listen to the difference before and after. See how that really brightens up everything that we kind of cut before? Because we were cutting around 4K, and now I'm boosting around 3.2. And I'm also boosting the top end as well. And in the EQ that we had here, we were kind of cutting some of those frequencies here, especially like here and here. And now I'm boosting in the middle here. And if I was to boost it with a digital EQ, it adds a lot of digital artifacts that we don't really like. I want it to sound natural and smooth. And the FGN here from Slate Digital does a great job of it, but you can use any analog style EQ for boosting. So you want to cut with a digital EQ and you want to boost with an analog EQ. Now we'll do the same thing over here on the lead guitars, and those soloed sound like this. These ones are a little bit more harsh. So once again, I'm going to cut with a digital style EQ, and I have a lot of frequencies here that were kind of in the way. Let's listen to some of them. Hear that whistle? Another little whistle. And once again, around 3.5K, just kind of makes things a little bit brittle there, and so I cut it out. So here is the lead guitars with no EQ. Really cleans it up a lot. But now I've kind of cut out some of that brightness and that sparkle that I'm really lacking from these electric guitars. Even though it was harsh, it sounded harsh and brittle, I'm still lacking that. So what I can do is now I can boost those frequencies with an analog style EQ. So once again, I'm 1.2, and yeah, look, 1.73. I pretty much just copied the same preset over. And now I'm boosting those same frequencies there that I had been cutting before. I literally had just cut 3.5K, and now I'm boosting it with an analog style EQ. But that adds a bit of saturation and warmth that you can only get from the analog style EQs. So now let's take a listen. I'm going to turn on this plugin, and I'm just going to bypass this specific EQ. So with it off. See how I'm adding that brightness and that sparkle back in there, but yet it doesn't sound harsh like it did by itself before we cut with the digital style EQ. This is something that really, really helps to make things not sound so bright or harsh, but yet you can add that clarity back in, even if you end up cutting too much on a digital style EQ. So you want to cut with a digital style, and you want to boost with an analog style EQ. You don't have to use Slate Digital plugins. You can use anything at all. I know Logic has a couple analog style EQs that work great, but this is the technique that the pros use and that I use to really get this style and this sound to really fit in the mix and make sure that everything fits where it's supposed to, but yet you're not fighting frequencies back and forth. If this video helped you, or if you learned anything at all, click the subscribe button and that like button if you wouldn't mind. It really helps me get my message to other people. Or if you want to, click the little share button and share it with somebody who might need to use this technique. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And now, as always, go create.